Hello and welcome to today's webinar. This is Church360 Unite, adding content to your website. This is the second of 4 sessions in our training series for Church360 Unite. My name is Peter Frank. I'm the Senior Manager of Marketing Technology at Concordia Publishing House, specifically working with the Concordia Technology Solutions team. If you're not familiar with Concordia Technology Solutions, or CTS as we call ourselves, we are the Church Administration Division of CPH, meaning we produce software that helps church on the admin side of things. Today we're talking about Church360 Unite, which is your church website builder. It's part of the Church360 suite that includes Church360 members and Church360 Ledger. Now this is our second session, and I'll get into that, and actually I'll go ahead and show you those different things. Yesterday we talked about setting up your website. I did a real broad introduction of Church360 as a suite and the other products, kind of our purpose behind Church360 Unite. I'm not going to get into that all again today. So if you're interested, I encourage you to watch that first session. We're looking at adding content to your website. That's the topic for today. Tomorrow we'll talk about how you get others involved. And then on Thursday, our session 4 is advanced techniques. And we'll cover some advanced techniques as we go. We looked at a number of things yesterday, but today we are really focused on that content side of things. A few housekeeping items before we begin. I am planning 75 minutes for presentation. Got a lot to cover, and I may go over that. I'm kind of known for going over my time frame, or at least internally I know that I always go over my time frame. But I am planning 15 minutes for questions. If I go over my presentation, I'm happy to stick around till all those questions are answered. Now, when I say questions, I don't mean verbally asking questions. Oops, I jumped too far. There we go. All attendees are muted, but we do want your participation. So please ask questions throughout. Now, we are going to be recording this. That's number 3. I completely went out of order there. But we are recording this. If you're watching the recording, thanks for joining us later on. I'm sorry you couldn't be here live, but we want your questions as well. So please enter things into the chat. If you are watching the recording, you can share it with our support team. I'll have details on that later on. But thank you very much for being here. I've got a lot that I'm eager to share. And as I get ready to share things, I always make a few assumptions about who's going to be watching this. So these assumptions don't necessarily have to be true. They just give you kind of an eye to who I was planning this for. The first one is that I assume you're a brand new user of Church360 Unite. We're going to start at some pretty basic stuff today, things that you probably did on day 1 of Unite if you've been using it for a while. But I know many people who are watching this live or who are watching the recording are on that day 1. So we're going to start at the beginning with content additions, and then we'll go from there, get into some advanced stuff. I'm assuming you have full access to all the features. Again, this isn't a requirement. If you can't edit content, then you're going to be kind of stuck during this webinar. But you don't have to have all of them to get value, all the access to all the features to get value out of this. But I do in the presentation. And so if you see something that you don't have, just know that it's probably because of your permissions. And finally, I'm also assuming you attended the previous session. That one was yesterday. We set up the site, we set up styles and themes and all of that. I'll do a very quick review of what we covered, not much at all. So I would encourage you to watch that first session. However, what I'm showing today really doesn't depend on that. You can get all of the value from today without really understanding anything that happened yesterday. These are separate topics, and while they connect in a number of points, it's not like a prerequisite. It just adds value to it. So my training goal for today is that by the end of our session, you will know how to set up your navigation and add multiple forms of content to your Church360 Unite website. And that word content, I like to use it because it's very broad. And we'll show a number of different examples, whether that's a page or a feed, whether it's text or media. Content is just filling up your site with information, things that will draw people in so that they'll actually visit your site. If you don't have content, nobody's going to come and just look at the pretty design. That's just not worthwhile. Our outline is first navigation. That's always the key. And I created our site with a template. That's part of our setup process. So I already have a navigation in place, but I'll walk you through how to set that up. We'll add a category, we'll add a few pages. The pages is going to be where we spend most of our time. But we'll dig into pages in more detail and not just add them, but go and modify the layouts and add different media to the pages. And then we'll wrap up looking at feeds. Feeds are a different kind of content, and they're really dependent on knowing how to edit a page. So that'll be where we wrap up today. If you are following along at home and you are not currently using Church360 Unite, I encourage you to start a free trial. It's 30 days, you have full access to all the features. That way you can use the trial and decide if you want to adopt this as your church website platform. But otherwise, let's go ahead and log into the software. I'm going to pull my screen up, make sure you can see that okay. All right, this is what we did yesterday. We created this and I made a few minor adjustments in preparing for today. What I have done is I have chosen a custom theme. You saw me go through that yesterday. We are using, sorry, not custom. I'm using a preset theme and then I customized it. So I chose the light theme and I went to this third option here. If you click on these, you can get a better view. Now I like the concept, but I made some modifications. I went over here to customize and I added a custom background, a custom banner, which is our logo. I added some additional colors. Yesterday I had this background color is green. I moved it to a darker blue to match the background today. Then I created a number of styles, and you saw me go through a few of these styles: heading 1, call to action, normal. I went and modified a few of these other headings since then, just to get me the same font that I'm looking for, the different colors. So you can see this is my style guide. I didn't talk about the font load yesterday. I probably should have. Real briefly, as you add multiple custom fonts like I have here, you're going to add a little bit of a drag to your website. And we're talking milliseconds here. And so this little meter here tells you if you've got too many of those custom fonts. Now I've just moved into the red. I'm not too worried about that. It's something to pay attention to. You know, if you are on that left-hand side, that left half, you're still pretty good because most devices have strong internet speeds. Now, we also covered a little bit of advanced features yesterday. I added some custom CSS, cascading style sheets. You know, this ties into HTML and the code behind the site. I added a few because I wanted to tweak the appearance. And this is allowed because there are so many different ways you might want to change the appearance of your site. We can't possibly account for all of them in the interface. So I showed you a number of these yesterday. I added a few more since then. One of the key things that I did is I just adjusted my line height a little bit. I wanted a little bit more space between them. And so you'll see that here. This is one of the tools that we provide for you to use, but then we also use as we support your site. So if you have ideas and things you want to change, so much of this can be done through CSS. And if you know what you're doing, go ahead and do it. There's certainly ways that you can break your site doing this, but if you know what you're doing, you'll know how to avoid those pitfalls. It's kind of hard to do that unless you are very intentionally trying to break your site. So if you do ever have any questions like that, if you don't know CSS, reach out to our team. We might be able to help you. I can't guarantee it because I don't know what the request will be, but I can tell you that I use this quite a bit just to make some tweaks to my design. So that's what we did yesterday. We also went through the settings, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So we are at, whoops, what happened to my image? It was there a second ago. Let me go ahead and just do a quick refresh. There it is. I don't know what happened, but sometimes when you're changing your settings, it will stage it out to give you a preview. And I think that's what happened here. So we're on the home page right now, and this is a very uninteresting home page because we didn't design it with content in mind. We designed it here with testing styles. What we're going to do today, though, is we're going to add a number of pages. We're going to update the navigation. You see, this is the navigation up here with some drop downs. Again, this is all templated. When you go to one of these pages, it's not giving you the information yet. It's just giving you a placeholder for it. So just wanted to be clear on that right off the bat. We're going to add another category to our page. We're going to talk about live streaming. We're not going to get into the actual live streaming, but this is probably your primary content right now. Now, if you're watching the the recording, just to give you a little bit of context, we're at the beginning of May 2020, right in the middle, or hopefully in the tail end of the coronavirus pandemic. That means that churches have shifted most of their activity online. Now, depending on where you're at, you might be meeting again in person. I know my church is starting to make plans for that. Many churches are doing that. But the last month and a half has really been about things online. So we're going to use that as kind of our launching point today. Obviously, if your church wasn't doing that beforehand, you didn't have the content for it. So we're going to add a section on our site saying live stream, and we'll put a few different pages on there. So let's go ahead and dig in. We're going to go up here in this admin bar to pages. Pages will cover your entire screen, give you two different columns. The column on the left is your active menu items. The column on the right is your available menu items, meaning they're not in your menu right now, but they could be. Categories are groupings of pages. Pages can be a number of different types. You'll see in your available menu items, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There's only so much I can zoom right now because of the screen size, but this should allow you to see it. It's going to be a little bit hard for me to see that so big. But you can see here that you'll have some different things showing. You'll have an icon, which if it's a page, it will just be this kind of icon. But if it's a category, it'll be multiple pages. I want you to think of categories like folders. In and of themselves, they're nothing. They're just a container. So you can't click on a category, but you can view a category and see what else is underneath it. And so that's why we have kind of a hierarchical structure or an outline format, where you have the category and you have the pages underneath it. Now, some pages are special. They'll have a little icon. The members page has icons of people. The calendar page has an icon of a calendar on there. And then sermons has a little speech bubble, like commenting. It's focused the other way where it's pointing up. That's what happens on a feed. You can comment on it. Now, we'll also have group pages. We'll talk about those tomorrow. Well, let me go ahead and zoom back out. This is way too large for me, but at least you can see the icons a little bit. I'm going to exit out of here and just show you how this functions. Depending on your theme, your navigation may look different, but all themes allow you to hover over items. If it's a category, you can't actually click on it to go anywhere. You see, I'm clicking to open it. But if it's a page, like home, I click it and it'll navigate my view to that page. So that's the difference between pages and categories in the navigation. Let's go back to our pages admin. On the far right, you have categories. Add category. When you click on add category, it adds a category to the bottom of your available menu. And so I'm just going to type this in as live stream. Now I have an empty category, which if you'll remember, you can't click on a category, so it's not going to actually save until I put something in it. What I can do is I can drag and drop. You'll see it kind of lifts it up, tilts it a little bit, and shows me where I might want to drop it. You can do a combination of drag and drop or scroll, depending on what you're trying to do. I'll move this up to the top just so it's easier to see. The next thing is I can add pages. Now, when I click on this second icon, add page, in the top right corner, I'll get a number of different options. There's the feed page, which we'll cover later on. There's the group page, which we'll cover tomorrow. Then there's what we call the blank page. That's just a page. There's no content in it. Then we have some page templates. If you click on these, you'll notice there's a short description. There's not actual content that you would want to keep on there, but there's prompts for the type of information that you might want to include on your site. This is for those times when you really don't know what to write. It'll give you some starting questions, some starting bullet points. It'll help you fill out the content of your site. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. They're just there as options. So right now I'm just going to start clicking on blank page, or just a plain old page as the description describes it. And I'm going to change the title. You see when I save it, I get a page on the right hand side and it says new page. Well, I certainly don't want that name. It's already in the edit mode, so that, or the renaming mode, so that I can type in one. And we'll say worship online. And then I hit enter to save it. So my title appears, and then also my URL, or what we call slug, the thing that comes in at the end, worship-online. Can't have spaces in that, so it'll replace the spaces with dashes. And it puts it automatically into a draft status. Now you see when I hover, actually, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Maybe you can. I can't see it in my audience view, but I think you're supposed to be able to see it. My cursor changes and tells me I can move it. See, I can drag and drop this all the way across. When I drag it across, it highlights live stream because I'm over that. Actually, I had it selected before, but it puts this dark box behind it to show where it's going to land. Now, if I go underneath live stream with a little bit of indent, that means it's contained in the folder. If I pull it too far over, it'll be on the same level as live stream, which means it'll be just part of the navigation. So it's pretty intuitive, but I want to verbally describe it in case you have any questions. But now that I've landed underneath and to the right of live stream, that says that it's included within that category. Now you'll notice that this is draft and all of these other pages are drafts. There are two states. There are draft pages and published pages. Draft pages are only available to be seen by administrators, but it allows you to get the page ready before your visitors see it. Once it's ready for visitors, then you publish it. So for example, right here, I'm on draft. If I was ready for people to see it, I go down to the lower left and click publish. Well, now the next thing it says is members only. We try to really build in the security so that you can't accidentally display something that you don't want to display on your website for everyone. So that's why we started as a draft and we started as members only. Members only means that people have to log in to see the page. Now, for something like Worship Online, that's not really necessary. But if you had prayer requests, well, yeah, you don't want that publicly available. So that's what that comes into play. Now, we also call that public or private, private meaning members only. So if you click on it, you can go down here and click the public button. And now it has no label on it, meaning it is ready for anybody to see. But I can re-click private and it'll mark it as members only. So those are your two states. And we also have delete and duplicate. Both of those are pretty clear what that means. But if we clicked delete, it would just get rid of it. If we click duplicate, it's going to put a new version of that page over here under available options, available menu options. All right, well, let's go ahead. I'm going to click on this and delete it. It's going to give me that confirm delete, but I have this here. Next, I want to save my changes. All right, it says your changes have been saved. You'll see this green box show up when there are messages. You just click the X to close it. So now I have a new category and a new page underneath it. If I X out here, you'll see there's live stream, there's Worship Online. If I click on this page, I've got a brand new page with that title. Well, let's add a couple new ones. We'll go to add page, blank page, create page, Bible study online, and we'll add another one. Sunday school online. I'll move them underneath here. Save changes. Now you'll notice I left them as draft. If I close out of here, I will still see them there. Bible study online, Sunday school online. Now watch when I log out. I'll click the sign out button. Now I only have two things up there because everything else was draft. If I go to live stream, the only thing that's visible is Worship Online. That's because I took it off of draft and I took it off of members only. So you'll notice how your navigation changes. I couldn't even type in the website address of those others. It won't let me access them unless I'm logged in. Now, that makes it really easy because nobody even knows they exist. So let's go ahead and log in again. Give it a second to get back here. And there's pages. So I think we covered everything that's here except for how we take things out of the navigation. So I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. Let's say that we don't want to include serve in our menu right now because you can't get out and serve. I can drag this whole category over into available menu items. And then it disappears. Now, that is a fun little quirk because we're saying we don't want those items to show up at all. But if I hit Save Changes and I refresh, serve is still there. It's not going to let you accidentally get rid of something like that. But if I move these items over one by one, and then I move the serve category over, that's going to disappear because a category is just a folder. If it's an empty folder and I move it over to available menu items, I have no reason to keep it. There's nothing in it. So that's why it disappears. I apologize, my notifications on Chrome are going off. That is not what I meant to do. I meant to close it. We'll just ignore those. All right, so I move those over to available menu items. And I'll close out of here. Serve is now gone, but those pages aren't gone. I can still bring those back in if I wanted to. If they were live, I could still link to them. They just wouldn't be in the menu. So keep in mind the difference between active and available menu items. That's just about menu. And then the status, published or draft, is what determines whether a page is turned on or off. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Navigation, page statuses. I'll show you another way to change the page status in a little while. We'll talk much more about public and private states when we get into users. But if you have any questions, go ahead and put it into the chat. And I'm going to move on to editing pages, the key part of what we're talking about today. I'm going to start off. Let's go stay on our home page here. Now, yesterday I put all this content in. If you notice, it's lorem ipsum, which is not even a real language. It's designed to look like English or Latin, but it's not. It's just a bunch of nonsense. But it really gives you a good idea of what text would look like on the screen without having to make up stuff. So I'm going to click over here on the right, or the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you have your information button, but on the left-hand side, you have edit page. When I click on edit page, it changes my entire screen. The menu at the top disappears. I get a new menu on the left-hand side. It's the settings, but the settings for the page, not for the site. The first thing I see is the status. Remember before we talked draft and published? You can change it here too. It'll update it on your navigation. You have your URL. So what your slug is. Your URL is what goes into your website address. So while your site, in this case, it's training.360unite.com, this page is home. In fact, the page title is home. That's what shows up in your browser up at the very top. The last thing is your meta description. That is what shows up in search engines. So for example, if I go and type in, let's go to Google, and I type in Concordia Technology Solutions. First off, you'll see a number of things for me because that's my page. But what I want to show is this right here. Oops, not click, go back, sorry. This part where it says work faster, smarter, and within budget, that there is what's called our meta description. It doesn't show on your site. It only shows in search engines. And so that's why we include it here, so that you can put it kind of in the background, but it describes your site. Now, I'll caution you, search engines don't use that to determine whether it shows up at the top or not, or at least not exclusively. It impacts it, but from what I've seen, it's a small amount. But it does impact whether or not users will click on it. So if you have a description, it kind of gives people a heads up of what's on this page. That's a great way to draw people in. So that's what that's there for. And title influences it as well. Again, more on the individual users seeing the title, because that shows up in that Google results too. Less on it affecting where in the search rankings things appear. So that's what these tools over on the left-hand side are. Now, if you go back to the page, you'll notice that I've got a lot of lines. I've got some boxes with pluses on there, on the right and the top and the bottom. This is what allows you to manage your page layout. So your page layout is how your different pieces of content are displayed. Right now, I have one box here, but it's a long box. So rather than editing this yet, I'm going to close out of edit page, go to live stream, worship online, and do the same thing here. So you can see just that one box, or what we call a cell. Now, cells contain content, and cells can be different types of cells. We're going to focus on rich text right now, but we'll show you some other cell types in a little bit. There's only one row, and if you wanted to, that could be one cell, one row, where you just put all of your content within one cell. That can be a little bit hard to manage. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. That's why we've added the ability to add cells and to add rows. So if you click the plus below or above the cell, that'll give you a new row. One cell per row to start. Now I've got 4 rows. Now they're all empty, so they don't really do anything for me, but I could add content. When you add a row, you get this little yellow dot on the far right-hand side of each of these new cells. That is saying that those are unpublished changes, meaning you're kind of at a work in progress. If I go to the lower left, you'll see here there's a reset button. It's the same color of these. What it tells me is that if I click reset, it'll remove anything that I've changed since I first started editing this page. So if I click reset, it'll revert it back to where I began. Now be careful, there's not a reset to the reset. Pardon me one second, I'm gonna turn off my light. It's starting to dry my eyes out a little bit. Hopefully you can still see me okay, although it's more important that you see the screen. So if I add more cells, as soon as I add it, I get the yellow dot on the right, the reset button down here. If I click publish, it'll refresh my screen, reset goes away, the dot goes away, telling me that this is what is live on our site right now. If I go in and click this edit button, you'll see when I hover over this, it changes to blue, and I get little icons in the right-hand corner. I have an edit button and a settings button. The settings button, when I click on it, allows me to remove cells unless it's the very first cell on the page, and I can edit cell types. We'll get into cell types a little bit later on. Right now we're looking at what's called a rich text cell type, meaning we can type content, we can add media. It's really the most flexible of all the cell types. All right, I'm going to close this for right now. I should also show that you can add cells to a row. You'll see on the far right, there's some plus buttons all the way to the far right. If I click plus, it adds a new cell here. Now, if I go between the two cells, there is a new cursor and a line that shows up that allows me to drag and determine the width of each cell. Now, I'll caution you, the width is based on a percentage rather than on a set pixel width. You can have up to 4 cells per row, and they can be different widths. So if I wanted to do that, I could do, you know, a real skinny one over here, a greater than or 0.5% here, 50% there, and then try to split the other ones. It's on a grid of 12, I believe. 3, yeah, it should be, actually, yeah, it's 12 different potential options, but the most number of cells you can have in a single row is 4. So you don't really need content in a really skinny spot like that. And again, as I'm adding these, you'll notice that the yellow dot appears on the top right-hand corner of each. So now if I hit publish, everything is saved. You can see that right here. If I go out of edit page, you can't see anything in the content because there's nothing there, but you can see how Worship Online has been skewed and moved over this way. That tells you that something's going on with the page. Now, ideally, you'd put content in each, but it could be used as a placeholder. All right, let's go ahead and delete a few of these and get into editing this. So I'm going to click the settings and do remove cell, settings, remove cell, settings, remove cell, settings, remove cell. Now I'm back to where I was before. I'll go ahead and hit publish. So that's exactly where I need to be. Let's edit by hovering over it and clicking this little pencil icon that says edit, or that means edit. Now I have an open box, if you will. When I type in here or click my cursor in here, I get a number of different editing tools. We'll cover pretty much all of these actually right now. The first thing I want to show you here on the left, and I showed this briefly yesterday, but it's styles. If I click on the drop down, you can see all of those styles that I created before with the names and the style themselves. We do this because it's a best practice to have a style sheet for your website. And if your website doesn't have a style sheet and kind of becomes a free-for-all, people will start doing whatever they want to do. Now, that may not be a problem for you if you're the only one that manages your website, but I'm gonna guess that you and your history at the church are probably not the only one who's gonna edit it. And you wanna keep some consistency dependent, regardless of who is helping at that time. So we'll go ahead and add a few lines. We'll say line 2, line 3. I'm gonna get over to the other page shortly where I have lots of content to modify, but I wanna start from scratch here. You'll see that if I select this, I can go through and change all of these really standard formatting options. So there's bold, see how I got bold, there's italics, underline, strike through. So you have these options. Then you have alignment. You can say left, right, center, justified, which justified requires more to justify. You have the bulleted lists, numbered lists, then block quotes, which pushes your text out, makes it look a little bit different. You can still apply these other styles on top of it, or you can turn them off. And we'll turn off strike through. You'll notice that block quote stylizes your text as italics because you're quoting somebody else. So we made it to stand out a little bit. That will vary by theme. Let me go back to just normal and remove block quotes. There we go, right back to where we began. Now I can indent it using this increase indent button, or I could decrease the indent. Now I'll warn you, in the web technology of today, indent is not exactly what you think it is. Indent is adding a specific amount of space to the right side or to any other side, depending on how you indent it. So you're not actually putting a tab in there. You're just changing the width of that cell or that paragraph. I hope that makes sense. Now we have an undo and a redo here, which just undoes and redoes your work. Just one extra precaution. Then we have links We'll look at links in a little while. Then we have a horizontal line, which in the web world is a horizontal rule. Excuse me. There we go. I was up late leading a church council meeting last night, and I got up early to go for a run. So you'll have to pardon me. I've had about 24 ounces of coffee, but I often get sleepy when I start talking for long periods of time. So bear with me if you see any more yawns. All right, so the horizontal line adds a space and a line to this. It kind of divides your content, and it can be used pretty strategically as you go through your site. Next, we have the insert asset. So if I click and go down below and add a space, I can go and insert a type of media. Well, we'll look at this in a little bit more detail, but I want to just clarify that you can insert and upload images, video, and audio. Now, how you do that, you can be very strategic, you can be very creative with it, but we'll just do one right now to show you. If I go and click image, now I get my asset uploader. I can go and upload, and we'll go to my desktop and images. And I have a number of different things to show you. We're going to start with just this image here. So it's taking it from my desktop, uploading it to our servers, making it available for you on this page. Now we've uploaded 2 other assets for the theme. Those show here for assets uploaded on other pages. I can click show 2 more and it'll refresh and put them in, but I'm not going to worry about those today. I just want to show this image of Christ on the cross and plug that in. Now you can see that this image is right here. When I click on it, I get some more options. It's in line where I put it, and it automatically goes the full width. My recommendation, and we'll show you how to account for it in other ways, but my recommendation is to always have images full width. Unless you are doing some kind of float and having text go around the images, there's other ways of handling that too. But that's what works best for mobile devices. And that's going to be a key thing to think about is what does this look like on a mobile device? Well, if I go, and yesterday I showed this, I'm going to show it again. If you open up incognito mode, which is Control-Shift-N, now it may be different depending on your browser, but if I go to training.360unite.com, it shows me where I was before. Now I haven't saved anything, but I'll click on Worship Online. I will drag this down and readjust the size to be more of a mobile phone shape, because I'm going to want to see what this looks like. So we'll go here and I'm going to go ahead and save my changes. I'm going to publish this. When I close this, everything stays because I just saved it. Now let's go back here. When I go and click refresh, it'll show me what it looks like on a phone. Well, the image is obviously going to be smaller because the width is smaller. It tries to adjust the width to the full view of your screen, which in this case is quite a bit smaller. Let me go ahead and do this on top of there so you're not seeing the same image on top of the same image. You see how that looks? That's not bad. This also points to if you have text on your image, on your mobile device, it's going to shrink down quite a bit. So just be very cautious with text. I'm not going to say don't use it on images. We've got another solution I'll show you in a bit, but keep in mind that it's going to shrink. All right, so that's, oops, wrong one. That's how you add an image. I'm going to go back to Edit Page and edit the cell. Click on the image. Now, I mentioned before there's additional options. What I have here is I can say this is left aligned, centered asset, right aligned asset. It's not actually doing everything all the way across because it's going to the left, but it's almost across. I can also say if there's no text on there, or if let's say somebody's using a text reader there, are not visually able to see the site, maybe they're visually impaired, you can click the change asset text alternative and say what this is. And you can just say cross, Christ on the cross. We'll click save there. When you hover over it, you'll see that text, but a screen reader will be able to describe it using that. You can just say full size asset, which says it takes the full width, or you can actually change the width to 100%. There we go, it expanded a little bit. So I forgot, it goes to full size asset, text align left first. You can always change that. Now you can also link to something. So if you are wanting to link to an event about your Easter services, you could click that and add a link to your image. You can also choose just a page within your site. You can say any URL, say an email address. Maybe you want people to email you when you click on that. Or a file to download. Maybe you put your bulletins online and you want them to download. That works in the same way where you upload that file here to your assets, and when people click on it, they download it. So that's links on images. If you add a link, let's go ahead here and pick one. You can choose whether it goes into this tab or a new tab. Click add. I'm gonna go ahead and save these changes. I'm gonna publish them down here. I'm gonna close this, and now when I hover over the image, it's a link. When I click on the link, it opens up the contact page in a new tab. So that's how that works. If I close this, we'll go here to edit. Let's go and edit the cell. I'll click on it and just click delete, get rid of it. Let's go ahead and, insert a video. Now this works the same way as an image until you get to displaying it. So I have a short video from one of my training webinars. I'll load that up real quick. It's an MP4 file. That's a preferred file format for online videos. There we go. Now it doesn't show me a preview, it just tells me it's a video. When I go and select it, now put it into a player, and it actually goes very wide, more than I was expecting. Oops. Now I can go here and change the width, and maybe I just want to put in 500 pixels. Now that'll shrink down. I can put it in the center, put it on the right. It actually won't center for me very well. Videos are a little bit harder to manage, but that's okay. You don't want it to, what you're most concerned about is your mobile view. So having it there will make sure that it's the right size. You can do the full size if you wanted to, but we've got the width already overriding it. You can't link a video to something else. That's because it's, when you click on it, it starts playing. So that's a video. Let's delete that. We're gonna go and insert audio. I'm gonna go ahead and upload it. You'll notice my asset manager changes each time because it's not that type of media. So this is the only audio file we have. So that's the only one it's gonna be able to find. I'll go ahead and insert that. This is a sermon from a number of years ago. You get some similar management tools there, but it's a separate form of media. You can see there's the countdown, how many minutes you have left, all of that. That's pretty nice. That's a standard audio player, but it works out well. Now you can also go and insert media from a URL. So I have a YouTube link that I got from our synod. If I go in here and say insert media and paste that link in, it's going to try to find it. In this case, it's a video, and it's going to put it full screen. I don't have the same kind of management options because I'm taking it from another source. But here is the opening divine service from our church bodies assembly in July 2019, our synodical convention. You can also use embed code. So let me go ahead and show you how that works. I'll paste this in. It's probably gonna start playing, so bear with me a second. I gotta pause it, but it's loading and it always takes a little minute or a little bit of time while I'm streaming. Okay, so now this is here. What I did with that embed is I just used our tools here. This is insert media, and it found the code that it needed. But let's say you do that and it doesn't work. What you can do is you can go, and we're gonna go to the far right, it says HTML block. When you wanna embed something, so if like a video, and you click share, if it doesn't work by having that link in there, go in here and click embed. And every type of content will be different, but this is what you're looking for, some embed code. I'm gonna copy it with my keyboard, Control C, go in over here and say insert HTML block, paste it in, save, and I get a very similar experience, but I was the one who added it this way. And when you think about what other things you might wanna put in there, the first thing that comes to mind are forms. Registration forms, e-giving forms, those all really rely on embed code unless it comes natively out of the software, which in our case it doesn't. So you can use that insert HTML block to put in custom code. And if you know custom code, you could write it yourself. But if it's coming from somewhere else, like a video, you can use that to paste in. All right, the next thing we have is a table. First thing you do on a table is you pick how many columns you have and how many rows you need. So here is a nice 4x5 table. I can go in and type in each cell and I can just keep going all the way through. I'm not gonna make you watch me type those 3 letters in over and over again, or 4 letters. Ooh, excuse me. But you have this. You can go and insert a row, insert a column, merge cells. Let's see. Merge down, merge up. So you'll see here now I can't merge because there's multiple ones in there, but there's different ways of doing this. All right, so hopefully that makes sense on the table side. The next thing we have here is a group link. We'll talk about that tomorrow when we get into groups. I'm gonna go ahead and publish these changes, save it. You guys can follow along if you want at training.360unite.com or on your own site. In the meantime, I'm gonna go over to the home page. Let's talk about a few different ways you can choose to design a page. And we'll see if we can make this look okay. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some information up at the top. So I'm gonna add a new row, and then it's a rich text cell. We're gonna add other stuff later. I'm gonna click Edit Page. In here, I'm gonna insert an image. And I'm just gonna put this image of Christ on the cross. Select. And then I'm gonna make sure it's going to 100%. Make sure it's centered, all of that looks good. Now, I could just leave that in there. You can have one piece of content in a cell and not worry about adding to it. I can add to it, but I don't have to. So I'm gonna publish that and get myself a nice banner image right from the start. Now, typically I'd recommend putting some text or something on it, but we're just doing real basic here. And there's my content below that. Now, if I go over to my mobile view, oops, there we go. You'll notice that if I go to home, it looks the same way, but it's all stretched appropriately and you've got a heading there. All right, well, let's add some more content. I'm gonna go to Edit Page. I'm gonna add another row in between here. And in fact, one thing that's a good practice is you can add multiple and divide them up. So like a third and a third and a third. I like doing this one quite a bit because then I can click Edit on each one of these and add a picture. So let's go ahead and upload a few pictures. Let's see. We'll do this here. This will be for first-time visitors. Click Edit. Let's see, what else do we have? This will be for Sunday school. And this one here. Oops. What do I have? Sermons. All right, so we're adding more information to our site. Now, I just described what those mean, but you may not have. You might not know what those are. I can go in here and add the next thing. So we can say, are you new? Check out our visitor page. And then we could do visitor page and put in an arrow. Then we can say, oops, let's go ahead and say, join us for Sunday school. Every Sunday at 9:30 in the fellowship hall. Learn more. Save that one. Here, let's say, just to keep it consistent, we'll just say every Sunday at 9:30 in the school. And then this last one, we're going to call sermons. Whoops. Let me save that. Sometimes you have to save it and edit it again to go below it. Let's see. Why don't we? Yeah, I think some of those might be my Zoom. Occasionally I'll have trouble entering text. So what I can do is I can go in here and remove the cell, and we'll just add it again. You see, as I drag and drop, everything resizes appropriately. So that. Yeah, I really think that's my zoom in here. We'll go here. Yeah, see, this is working just fine. Sermons. So I'm not going to zoom out, but it's because I'm cutting off the sides of my page, it's having trouble moving that editor over. So take a look at past sermons. We'll just call this view sermons. All right, so if I put this in here, I now have images, I now have text. It doesn't look great, but it works. Well, that's where styles come in. So if I go back here to edit, and I select this first one, this should be a header. Now, which header? Maybe header 3? Yeah, that looks good. And then visitor page, I'd like to make that a call to action. You can see there, then I can center it and I can link it to a page on my site, and we'll call this welcome. We could even center both of these. And now because I have this style already set up, I can go through each one and do it in the same way. I'll do all of them. Oops. Centered. And then we'll make this one a link. Save those changes, and one last one. So even with just a few simple changes, let's see, we'll just call this Sunday School. I have to be careful where I'm clicking though. I'm going a little bit fast just in the interest of time. I keep clicking on the wrong thing. All right, we'll add one more link. All right, well, that's looking better. Now, if I wanted to, I could drag and drop this and just move them back and forth. So I put sermons back over here. Well, that's looking all right if you ask me. So I'm gonna go ahead and publish my changes. Now let me show you how that stacks on a mobile device. We'll go back here. We're gonna refresh. So you'll notice that I get my first one and then my next one, and it goes down one after the other. It doesn't shrink them down to fit on the screen because when you start getting onto a mobile device, it gets smaller and smaller and harder to see. So it just stacks them accordingly. So that's something to keep in mind. Whoops, hit the PowerPoint in the background. All right, I'm gonna take a quick look at my outline. Yeah, we've got 15, 20 minutes or so. I've got a few more things to show you. Let me go back into my editing experience. I wanna show you some different types of cells. So the first one I wanna show you is carousel. If we go up here, we have this image in place. It's a static image. It shrinks accordingly. But maybe I wanna have multiple images on there and have it rotate. That's what's called a carousel. And so the first thing I do is I go click the settings button, click edit cell type, and change it to carousel. When I change, it changes my experience. And you might be familiar with things like widgets. That's kind of what this is. It's a different kind of cell, so there's a different editing experience. Well, then when I click edit, it takes me to this window. So the first thing is do you want this to be animated? Auto advance every 5 seconds or so? Sure. Then you pick your height. This will be fixed. So you want to make sure that you have your images the same size and you know what height they are. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 400 pixels. I'm going to add an image. Oops. So let's select my first one. I click select, and then you can see what's in there. I'm going to go ahead and upload. And the first thing I'm going to upload is our worship image. This is identifying that you're worshiping online. So you upload it. If it's already on there, you can use one of those, but I have to upload this one. And there it shows up right there. So I select it, and then I click add. This is what I'm trying to get back to. I want to see that preview. I'll talk about the heading and caption and everything in just a second. Let's go ahead and just save this. I'll take off auto advance, just save this. And then I publish my changes. What does this look like? Well, it's just an image. Now this image sits just like those other ones does, but it's in a different kind of cell. Now I caution you, when you go to a mobile device, oops, we'll refresh. This is going to put in a black background because it's a single image. This is to kind of indicate you don't want to do this because it's stretching it down. It's keeping that height fixed at 400. So we put that black background in there just to kind of let you know, well, there's more to it than that. So while you can do a single image in a carousel, I recommend using the rich text cell because you can manage it better. But when you go into a carousel and add another image, we'll click add image. We'll select it. We'll go and upload it. We're gonna go to Bible study. There it is, and we'll click add. Now it becomes a carousel because you have more than one image. So I'm going to click auto advance, and we'll say every 5 seconds, and now we'll hit save. Now the edit mode view doesn't change at all. I'm still going to hit publish, so these are live. Close out of edit page. We'll move our message. Now you'll see there's little arrows on the left and right side, and there it goes moving automatically. So you can toggle between these and see different things. If we go to mobile and we hit refresh, now the background is white. We still have our ability to toggle through here. Now it's a pretty wide image, and that can complicate things as you look at that. And so you'll have to play around with your image sizes some. One of the things that you could do, if you wanted to, would be to, we'll click edit page, and then we'll click here, go to edit. You can drop it down to like 200 pixels. Publish. Now it drops it down here, but on your mobile device, when you refresh it, oops, looks a little bit better, see? So you've got some different options there. It just depends on your devices, how you want to do it. If you go in here, you could always add a few cells on the outside. If you put nothing in the cell, then it will disappear. But you could always add a nice border or something behind that. I'll be honest, I don't like carousels because it doesn't show all the information. So I don't have a good recommendation for what size you should do, other than if you do like a square image. So let's go ahead, we'll click edit page. I'm gonna go ahead down here, and I can drag and drop this. I'm gonna move this one down. I'm gonna add another one here. Actually, we'll move that here, oops. I'm gonna change this to a carousel. Square images work out really well because it's going to be the same no matter what. We're gonna add in these same images that we had a moment ago. These are also 400 height. Let's see, we'll just add that one. And we will publish that. Now, if you put it in between these, obviously it's going to look a little bit different because you don't have those texts there. But when you go onto a mobile site, and we'll refresh. See, this is where it starts looking pretty nice. You've got a little bit of spacing in there. Maybe I remember the height wrong. But you've got that same kind of image. And so that would be one of my recommendations, is that if you're gonna use the carousel, don't necessarily do it for your main banner. Do it for something that can be a square, and then it'll be the same size no matter what. All right, let's go ahead, we'll go back in here, edit page, remove that. We're gonna move this one back up. There we go. I'm gonna remove these additional cells. I'm gonna go in here and put this back at 400, publish this. You know, when you're not worried about mobile phones, it makes your site a lot easier to manage, but mobile really makes it tough because it's such a different screen size. So that's where I really like to have text. But let's say you just want to focus on this. Your analytics tell you that most of your visitors are going on their desktop. So you're gonna not worry about mobile phones. Not a good strategy, but let's go with it. I'm gonna show you under edit page and edit carousel where you can add text to your images and in a really dynamic way, show them on top of the image so it's always clear, and that works out pretty well on mobile too. So we'll say join us for online worship this Sunday at 10 o'clock a.m. You have a heading and then a caption, which is kind of like a subheading. Then you can link this image. You can link it to an external URL, which you have to type in with the http://, or better yet, just go to a Unite page. And so we'll go down here to worship online. Now you can also choose whether this opens up in this tab or another tab. That's your call. Then we can say online Bible study starts this Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. and we'll link it to Bible study online. We'll do both of these in this. Now we'll go another tab. So I've added these additional details, and when I click save and publish, let's show what that looks like. You see, it takes your text, puts a kind of a blurry dark overlay behind it and puts it on top of your image. And that looks pretty sharp if you ask me. Now you can still toggle between them, but now there are links as well. They open up to new pages. There we go. And each one goes to a new link. Let's take a look on mobile just to see how that appears. We'll refresh. Now we still have that issue with the height, but the text shows up on the right size. And so you can play around with this, play around with different image heights. You know, it just depends on what you want to show. You know, one way that you might do it, let's go here. You could always do text on this side and kind of split it up. Welcome to Christ Community Church. I'm gonna go grab this Lorem Ipsum from down here. Make this a nice heading too. Save this. Oops, I gotta publish it. And then maybe you'd use a different image size. But remember how things stack. Oops, I clicked on the link. When things stack on the side, we can, where is it? I'm losing track of my screens. There it is. You have that text up at the front, and then you have this. And if we reduce the height even more, it might look even better. So just play around with it, see what you think makes the most sense. All right, with a few more minutes left, I want to show you our feeds. Now, everything you've just learned here will provide you with the tools you need for feeds. If I go to pages up at the very top and I click add page, feeds are our next type of page. So what is a feed? Well, in the simplest of terms, it's a blog. Now, blogs are the common name for syndicated content, meaning content that is released on a periodic basis. It's got a timestamp on it. It's meant to always show the latest at the top. You know, when you look at like a news website, they put the top stories up at the beginning. You know, the latest and greatest goes at the top. It's kind of like a blog. But if you use the phrase blog, you think of people who are writing long form content, you know, blogging about what they're eating, you know, what kind of fashion they like. All of that stuff gives you a different connotation. So what I would suggest is you get a little bit more specific than just blog. Now it could be pastor's blog, which tells you, well, these are pastor's thoughts. Or maybe you don't even use the word blog. You say it's announcements or sermons or things like that. Well, if you go and create a feed, Create page, and I'm going to call this, let's see, we'll call this announcements. The first thing you'll notice is that it defaults it to members only. Well, before it defaults it as draft. Well, feeds don't have that same level of permission because the feed is kind of like its own container, except that you can click on it. So it has to be active all the time, but you can make it public or private. So we'll go through here, and I think, yeah, I have news and announcements. I'm going to take news and announcements out and move announcements over here. And I'm going to go and make this a public page. So we'll click Save Changes. And we'll close out. So if I go to connect now, I have announcements right here. You'll see what it looks like. It puts the title in that H1. And so a header one or heading one. So it gives you that feed title right away. And now it says there's no posts. Well, if we go and click edit page, now we can go and add a new post. And so we will just call this sermon for May 10th, 2020. And let's go get some text put in here. If you've never been to lipsum.com, L-I-P-S-U-M, it is a fantastic way to generate that lorem ipsum that you saw before. It just looks like real text without being real text. So now I have my sermon in here. One thing I might recommend doing is adding an audio version of your sermon. You can go here to insert media. Oops, sorry, insert audio. We'll pull this one in from the other. And it gives you that kind of nice experience. If you put your manuscript in, you put a recording in, you get the full-fledged experience. Oops, what I should have done. Let me delete that real quick. Let me put in my image first. I created an image for this before. Well, I called this announcements and then I put sermons. I should have just called it sermons. But you can use images here. You can put in other media just like on a page. And you can use your styles just like on a page. So if you want to highlight certain things, we'll do that in block quotes. And then we'll give a very nice call to action at the end. Center that up. All right. So you can see how quickly you can create a nice looking blog post with different media using all the same tools that you had before. Now you can schedule this for a future time to launch it. And maybe you say, well, I've got my sermon ready. I don't want to launch it until Wednesday. So we'll go the 13th of May and we'll just plan on launching it at 9:00 a.m. Oops. We'll click create and it'll be now scheduled for that time. All right, that's the basis of that. And you can think of a lot of different possibilities. Let me show you a few settings. We're on the blog page right now. This is where you add new blogs. But you have blog settings or feed settings. So you've got the URL, the title, the description, but then you can say how many posts you show per page. So you can show, 10 posts per feed page, or maybe you just show the post content. Then you might want to say, well, we'll go up to 20. You can allow comments, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then you can say, well, I'll allow them, but I want to moderate them, meaning that people can post, but you have to approve it before anybody else can see it. So we'll go ahead and click publish. This is what it looks like when you don't show the text. If we go in here and show post content. We'll publish that. It shows everything. Now, if I click on it, it takes me to that post, and then it replaces it with the title right up at the top. Everything else is the same, except now you have comments down below. And so people can comment, post it. If they are logged in, it puts their information in there. Under activities, which we haven't really gone into yet, you see comments. Now, if you set this to require you to approve them, you'd have to click approve before it shows. Actually, just like I did. So now it shows there's no comments waiting to be moderated. Close out of that. So now that comment will show when we refresh the page. There you go, right there. So think of the possibilities of what you can do with this. You know, if you have a prayer request feed, it's private behind the password of your site, but people can comment, they can say, I'm praying for you. That can be an encouragement. You could think of like maybe needs in your community. Anybody who's looking for grocery shopping during the coronavirus. People could go and post comments on there. You'll be notified if you mark them for moderate. So you can do a lot of different things with this. If you go here under posts, this is where you can see a listing of all of your different posts. So if you start to get, dozens and dozens, it might take a little bit of time, but you can sort them by date, by author, by name, all of that. You can manage them here. You can switch feeds if you want. Maybe you've had one consistent feed and you decide to split it. Well, you could move the old post to a new feed. There's just so many different options that you can do there. And it's all using those same tools. The one exception is that you only have one cell type. And that's because of the nature of feeds. You see, if we go back here, feeds, let's, announcements. Feeds have this little icon here on the right. When you click on this icon, it takes you to what's called an RSS feed. This is XML. This is a type of language that different feed readers can understand. Meaning, if you have your browser set up for a feed reader, you'll get notified when the latest posts are displayed. You can plug this into a variety of different apps, but it requires that your information is consistent. And so that's why we don't have those different cell types or anything like that. So it's a different kind of page. It serves a different purpose, but it allows you to dynamically add the latest content, always have it show up at the top, schedule it out in advance. Really some interesting ideas can be done with this. All right, we are at 11:18. I went a little bit over time, but not much. I think I covered everything. Inevitably, I'm sure I missed something, but we've got some more advanced things on Thursday, and I can show some of that. But if you have any questions about what I covered today or what I covered yesterday, go ahead and put them in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to walk through some of the different training resources we have available. We have our training webinars that happen throughout the year. We don't typically have long series like we have today, but we do that about once a year, and then we have some other webinars throughout. If we announce a new feature, we'll post it on our blog, and I'll often include a video with that walks you through that feature. We have a resource center where all of our recordings are shared. That's where you'll be able to find this recording after the fact. Now, if you need some very specific help, I recommend you contact our software support team. Our support team is available through the online help center. They update articles. You can post comments in the discussion, all sorts of great things there. You can email them at support@cts.cph.org. You can call them at 800-346-6120. Those are the different ways you can reach out to them and get your questions answered. They don't have to be just problems. Sometimes we hear, well, I just needed to learn how to do this, but that's not what support's for. Yes, that's what support's for too, training. If you have a specific question, call them and ask them. That's what it's there for. For our question and answers today, a few ground rules. Please type your questions into the GoToWebinar chat. Many of you have already done that, and I'll review those in just a few moments. Remember, recording will be emailed, and I say within 48 hours, it's usually much quicker, but you don't have to worry about asking. You'll get a link in your email. That's one of our most common questions. Then finally, if you're watching this recording, you can't ask any questions live because this is a different time. You can send your questions to our support team at the email listed there. All right, I'm going to take a drink and look through some of the questions. If you have any more, please go ahead and put them into the chat. All right, we've got some good questions here. Let's jump back into the software. The first one was from a little while ago. Christine is asking if I'll be covering users this morning. And as you saw, I did not. That is actually going to be tomorrow as we talk about getting people involved. Go ahead and refresh this, get back to the admin side. Monty was asking about if I remove serve and then put it back later, will the URL be changed? Well, let me talk through that a second. Now, if you remember correctly, serve was a category. And underneath that category, we had church, community, and world. Well, serve, let's go ahead and hit save changes to go back to that, because this is a thing that can be confusing, and I like to clarify this. You'll see here serve again. I can't actually go to the serve page because it's not a page, it's a category. And when I click on one of these, like church, my URL for, oops, hang on. Well, technically I would normally just hover over it. Apparently clicking on it too many times caused it to get stuck. So I'm just going to do a quick refresh. Well, now it's going slow. There we go. Now I'm on church. So it could just be that it was slow processing. But if you, whoops, yeah. When I live stream, my whole system kind of drags down and then I get impatient. So I think that's what happened there, because now when I click on church, it goes there. Well, the church page is training.360unite.com/church. That will not change unless I delete that page. So regardless of whether it's under serve or it's in a different menu item, or if I pull it out of the menu, the page's URLs won't change. However, serve as a category doesn't have a URL, so it can't change. If I go here and click Save Changes, I just moved the pages out, I left an empty category. Well, that goes away because it doesn't have anything to show. It still stays there, so that's one way to do it, but all it is a placeholder. You don't really need to keep it there. So I hope that helps explain it. The pages URLs will always stay the same unless you change them intentionally. The categories have no URL. Next up, Dan is asking, how can I download from the audio player? Well, the audio player, and I'll go back to that just so you can see, is exactly that, a player. It is not an audio file manager. It's just an HTML5 player, as they call it. So it references the file, but it's not putting it out there for you to download. Now, I don't think, even if you like right click on it, there's nothing that you can do to download it, but you can add a file for people to download, and I didn't show that. Let's do that real quickly. So if, let's pretend this says, well, we don't even have to pretend, let's make this say, oh, I am in the wrong spot. I am on the feed itself. I want to go to the post to edit it. There we go. Download audio file. I can make this a link. See this link button, link to, And then I have some different link types. We'll say a file for download. And I can show more assets. Here's that MP3. So I click add. And see now it's a link. When I click save draft and I change edit page, when I click on this, it takes me to that file. Now, because I'm opening it in a browser, because I'm in a browser, my browser automatically plays MP3 files for me. So it'll depend on who's doing that. But you can always go and right click, save link as, download it to your desktop that way. So it puts it available to you, but the player itself is just a player. Next up, Mike is asking, to manage space, how do you delete uploaded images no longer in use? Will a warning appear if an image is on a page? Let's see here. If we go, we'll just stick with this. Refresh. So if you go here to edit page, and I'll click on this image or double click on it. The way to delete is this little trash can icon there. If you delete an image, let's see, well, we're using all of those. It won't necessarily warn you that it's being used elsewhere because it says assets uploaded on other pages. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's best to go to those as you're deleting those pages to delete the assets with it. I'll tell you, one of the things that we've talked about quite a bit is a better file manager process. And we're looking at different options there. This is an area that I think everybody on our team wants to improve, but we've got to figure out the best way to do it. This puts it right into the context, but it's only that context. So you can go and delete things. I'll go ahead and delete, we'll just delete this image right now. When you close out of it, if we refresh the screen, it goes away because we deleted that. So it's something to keep in mind. I agree it's not the best experience, but that's how it works right now. All right, Brianna is saying, what size video is too big to be embedded in regards to 1, uploading, and 2, playback functionality? The cap is 100 megabytes for file uploads. The second part though, playback functionality, well, that really depends on your audience. If they're watching it on a device with a strong internet connection, well, then 100 megabytes might be fine. If they don't have a strong connection, it might be too much. My recommendation for video specifically would be to upload it on something like Vimeo or YouTube. Rely on their servers to serve it. You can go over 100 megabytes there. But they do a lot of optimization, and they have some really clever ways of making their videos pop up quickly for devices with poor internet connections. Video is their game. That's what they're the experts at. It's not ours. We are not the experts at it. We provide a functional solution, and it serves all practical purposes. But if you're really using video a lot, I would recommend putting it on one of those channels and then just embedding it like I showed you before with the YouTube video. If you go with a Vimeo, you don't have to worry about the ads. There's other ways of embedding YouTube without worrying about ads showing up afterwards. So you've got a lot of options there. We provide the upload video part just so that you could avoid using YouTube and Vimeo, but we can't compete with them in terms of quality. Like, that is what they do, and they're a much bigger organization than us. So that's my disclaimer on the video. Again, it serves all practical purposes, but if you're doing large videos, I would put them on there. All right, next up. Are pre-built templates available that include pages for calendars, sermons, etc., so we don't need to invent our own website format? Paul is asking that, and there's a number of different things that can go into that. I think what you're asking for is something like what I did on the home page. Do we already have that set up for you? And the answer is no. The rows and cells are fairly new, and we don't necessarily have defined best practices for that. It's something that we've looked at, but we wanted to get it out there and see what people do with it. Now, if you're talking about navigation, yeah, we do. That's what I did up here. The navigation is already pre-built. You can go ahead and fill in your own content, add or remove page that will. So there's a couple different ways you can approach it, but I think what you're referring to is the page itself. And no, we don't have those right now, but that's a really good suggestion, something we've talked about before, and something that's still possible for the future. Eileen is asking, for audio files, if you need to create one, there are two easy options. Record with the PowerPoint slide. No need to populate the slide, but you can save the audio file when you're done. That's a really good suggestion. She also uses the free program Audacity. Both will give you MP3 files that you can post to your site. Excellent, thank you very much. So again, that's Audacity. All right, are there any other questions that you have out there? It's a pretty quiet group today. We have a lot of people on here. I'm not seeing any more. Well, we were right at 11:30. So without any further questions, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up for today. Thank you very much for being here. I very much appreciate your participation. I hope this was interesting to you. Again, we covered a lot of basic stuff, a few advanced things. I wouldn't call them real advanced, but I'm curious because this is all about creativity. If you can come up with some cool ideas and want to show them off, let me know. Send me an email at peter.frank@cph.org. I'd be happy to show them off as examples in future webinars, or shamelessly steal the idea and put my own images in or something like that. Again, this is all creativity, and there is that aspect of using the best practices. I'm not going to steal your ideas. You know, I might borrow them or use them as good examples, but I always like to see what people are doing with our software. So thanks so much for being here. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see you at our webinar tomorrow.